this Friday
let me start with Rick Tyler. Rick, first of all, a couple quick questions for you as a Republican communication guru. How are the Republicans doing right now in this Kavanaugh fight?
Not particularly well, Joe, but I think I think the tide is. Well, look, here's the problem. This whole process is not designed to get at the truth, and now you have this lawyer Katz who's representing Blasey, and they're putting all these conditions on a hearing, and I think this is maybe backfiring on the Republicans, or not the Republicans a little bit, but on the Democrats a little bit.
But on the Democrats, and Donnie, you're a PR guy. The last thing, if you're running PR for the Republicans, that you want is to have Dr. Ford testifying on the committee. So the more preconditions they set down, the more you're going, thank you. Thank you. Now, if you can make it on a rocket ship to Mars, thank you. Make this as impossible as you can for us. It seems to me at some point the Democrats are going to have to step in and say, listen, we need your client up there.
Yeah. What the Republicans don't understand, and she will get up there, but I don't know if any of these Republicans ever have any wives or daughters or sisters or friends that in any way have gone through an assault. But when you listen to a woman talk about how she's gone through, and they remember what the breath smells like and everything about it, and their eyes well up with tears, do they not understand what's going to happen when this woman gets up there? And if they any way,
well, of course they do, which is why they don't want her to get up there, Susan.
But she will get up there.
Yeah, but they don't want her to get up there. So now they're trying to get maybe get a legal counsel to ask questions. And I'm sure they're thinking, hopefully we could find a woman who could be a legal counsel, get up there to ask her questions. But now Ford's saying they're not going to do that.
Every day this goes on and another condition is brought up is another horrible day for the Republicans. And we saw a lot of frustration. I thought it was particularly interesting when Susan Collins spoke up and kind of said, you're moving the goalpost on us a little bit, and pushed back saying, you know what, you've got to, we can't keep jumping through hoops for you. And that was obviously, and I think she had that conversation with Democrats. And the Democrats are in a little bit of a tough bind here about how they come, but it is horrible for Republicans. The fact that they have to go out to an outside counsel because they need to have a woman. They don't need outside counsel. They need a woman to ask her questions.
Right.
This is going to be disaster for the Republicans, and yet they still probably need to try and force this through. If they don't get this done by next Thursday, it's off the table, and that's going to even become more of a campaign
Well, I actually
issue.
think it'd be, if they find a woman, litigator to cross-examine her. That's actually far preferable to having Orrin Hatch going, hey, lady, I think you're just a little mixed up in your head.
But those men don't keep their mouths shut anyway, Joe. We've heard reports about them. They still make comments, you know, in conference calls or here or there. They don't know how to handle themselves.
Why don't we talk about that in the news?
Well, new polling is showing support for Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation has fallen since he's been accused of committing a sexual assault or an attempted sexual assault while in high school. According to new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, 38% of voters now say they oppose his confirmation. That is up 9 points since last month, when 29% were opposed. And back in July, 26% were against Kavanaugh's confirmation. This is the first time in the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, dating back to John Roberts' nomination in 2005, that a Supreme Court nominee has been underwater on this confirmation question. Increased opposition to Kavanaugh has come in particular from women over 50 who were +3 on Kavanaugh's confirmation in August and are -7 now, a drop of 10 points. Suburban women whose support went down 5 points since last month. Independents who were +15 last month are -16 now.
Boy, that's a
31-point drop.
Turnaround.
And seniors were +9 in August and are -10.
So, Gene Robinson,
now.
that poll and a quarter won't even buy you a cup of coffee at a Starbucks on Capitol Hill. But it does point to the bigger, I mean, as far as the outcome of Kavanaugh, none of the senators are going to be looking at those poll numbers, but people who are running, Republicans who are running in the suburban districts that Hillary Clinton won and that Republicans hold, are looking at those numbers because man, that is just one more nail in their political coffin. The very groups that they were already losing, they're bleeding even more support from.
Yeah, they are. And, you know, those numbers 38 to 34, that means there are a lot of undecided out there. There are a lot of people who aren't paying as close attention as we are. When this hearing happens, and I think it will happen, those numbers will go up. More people will have an opinion on Kavanaugh. And I see the opposed number having a much better chance of rising farther and faster than the support number because of what Donnie said, because of what the spectacle is almost sure to be like. And so then I think you'll see more Republicans paying attention to those numbers, and they will be quite worrisome. You know, they feel at this point that they have to bull ahead, that they'll be worse off if they fail to get Kavanaugh through. But that equation could change after a hearing.
All right, so Jeremy Peters, you're looking at how the evangelical community, leaders in particular, are looking at the Kavanaugh confirmation. They're frustrated. Tell us why.
Well, because they see the chance to cement a conservative majority on the Supreme Court for a generation at risk of slipping away. I mean, if you think about all of this,
what do they think is not being done?
They think, well, that's a very good question, because it's hard to argue that the Republicans aren't really doing everything they can at this point to try to speed this along, right?
Position.
I mean, so that's why I think the next few days are so crucial. So if you're Chuck Grassley, do you move the hearing a few days forward? That doesn't seem like an unreasonable ask, really. And Republicans have been having two conversations. One, publicly, trying to appear as reasonable and deferential as possible in public to Ford, saying, yes, we will accommodate you. We will come to you. We will send investigators. We will allow, we won't put you in front of a public commission and make you do this on television. On the other hand, because Republicans are under so much pressure from their base to get this done, from especially evangelical Christian Catholic leaders, a lot of whom were involved in the selection process of Kavanaugh in the first place, they realize if they do not get this done, if Kavanaugh's nomination falls apart, that very well could be the end of the Republican control of the Senate, because voters would just be so angry, so depressed, so deflated, they're probably not going to turn.
Well,
thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.